Therefore, we have to be strict on both ends. Therefore, we won't be able to do malacha. We won't be able to do malacha work throughout this duration of time, which is called Bein Hashmashot, which is called twilight zone. But that being said, Amar Rav Yossi, we're starting at 35b1. Amar Rav Yossi, which is the top right column. Yossi says, the son of Zvida, Hoseh malacha b'shnei bein hashmashot. A person does malacha, a person does work during both bein hashmashot. That means if he works throughout the duration of time, from sunset until it's definitely night, if you do malacha throughout that time period, 2 days in a row, so then there's definitely been a violation of Shabbat. There's definitely been a violation of Shabbat. Chayev chatat. He's obligated a sin offering. What's a sin offering? Sin offering comes from a person who unintentionally violates the Shabbat. So, certain prohibitions of Shabbat, right? Person cooks on Shabbat unintentionally, makes a fire on the Shabbat unintentionally. He brings a korban chatat. Now, when the guy cooked bein hashmashot, if he cooked on a Friday night, Friday between sunset, from the sundown until the stars came out, if he cooked, so that's called a safek aveira. He might have violated the Torah because that time period might be Friday night, right? Even though it's not completely dark yet, sun has gone down, it's not completely dark, that gray zone might be Friday night. And if he does malacha, if he does work during that time, you have to bring a korban that's called an asham talui. That's called a guilt offering that's brought on a doubt that I might have violated the Torah. However, if he did malacha, if he worked from sundown till evening on Friday night, and he worked from sundown till evening on Saturday night, he did work throughout that duration of time, he definitely violated the Shabbat. It's not a question of whether he violated the Shabbat. He definitely violated the Shabbat because either that time period was day, so therefore Saturday night he was in violation of the Torah, or that time is night, and Friday night he was in violation of the Torah at that time. Or if some part of that time was day and some part of that was night, but if he did work throughout that time period, meaning if you say the beginning is day and the end is night, if he did work in the beginning and he did on the first night, on Friday night, he worked at the end of the gray zone on Saturday night, maybe he did, we don't know, maybe he did definitely violate the Shabbat. But if Rashi says he worked throughout this time period, then he definitely violated the Shabbat, and therefore he has to bring a korban chatat. Mimanav shach. That's what he says. Mimanav shach is definitely, in such a situation, the guy definitely violated the Torah. So it's interesting that the Torah, we have a korban, and that the Gemara here is focusing on the korban, the offering that's brought for the definite violation of the Torah. But like we said before, there's a korban for even by doing an act that you might have violated the Shabbat, right? You have to make a korban. Similarly, there's a korban. If let's say there's two fats, certain fats of the animal, a lot of the fat of the animal is kosher, but there's a specific fat of an animal that's not kosher. And that's the job of the butcher. The old days, the mom and pop shop, the butcher would not only soak and salt the meat, he would also go ahead and remove those fats. Today, everything is done in the warehouse or whatever. Today, before you see it in the shop, it comes in ready. Most, at least, the big centers of where there's Jewish communities, where there's such a vast demand for meat, so the large supermarkets have taken over. But still, the process has to remain. It still has to be soaked for a half hour. It has to be salted for an hour. then washed after that, and also still has to be, to wash away the salt and the blood, whatever came out, and they still have to remove that fat, those fats. For a person with he had two pieces of meat, two pieces of fat. One was kosher, one was not kosher fat. And he went ahead and he ate one of them. He doesn't know which one he ate. He would have to bring this offering called an Asham Torah because maybe you violated the Torah. So it's a very serious thing. And then if a person today, in today's day and age, I don't know if you want to send to the group, if a person nowadays today would intentionally do an act, work after sunset, so then it's even worse because it's not something that was done unintentionally, it was done intentionally, right? If a person intentionally does, that's a much worse act than unintentional. But we see Adam and Ralph, I want to point out, we see that the Torah is so strict that an unintentional act, meaning you don't know which one you ate, you have to bring an offering. That means it needs a kapara, it needs atonement for doing such an act. So how much more so intentionally going ahead and doing an act of work after sunset, where you might be, where your act's an intentional act, how much more serious that would be. So, Amale Rava Leshameh. So one of the things we should come out from the Gemara here by learning is the seriousness of this gray zone, right? That once the sun goes down, and then today, it's interesting, we're learning about this Gemara in the most challenging time of the year, correct? Isn't this the most challenging time of the year that the sun goes down the earliest? Yes. And how do you like that moment that we are learning perhaps from the most earliest Shabbos, and they don't really get much earlier than this week, and we are learning about being careful about sensitivity to this gray zone, the zone of Bein Hashmashot, from the time the sun goes down till it gets dark. Both being careful on the beginning of the Shabbat and the entering of Shabbat, and both of the leaving of Shabbat, because Shabbat is not over Saturday night when the sun goes down. Shabbat is only over when it actually is dark. When we said, whatever that time might be, whether it's 45 minutes after sunset, 50 minutes, 41, whatever the time might be, follow your calendar. Talking about calendar, today on the Jewish calendar is a very big day, because last night it started saying Baruch Aleinu. There's been a big switch in the Amidah. Ashkenazim call it the Saint Talmud Levracha morning. The Ashkenazim call it, that's the switch. And so we're just talking about the big switch in davening last night, that they moved to Baruch Aleinu. And for the Sfardim that they call it Baruch Aleinu, don't get lost in the fact that it's a longer bracha. Remember, the meat and the potatoes is the V'sein Talmud Levracha. The meat and the potatoes of the switch is that we're asking now for rain. Already in Israel, last month already, they already started asking for rain. So they already switched over to Baruch Aleinu, but they have a bigger need of rain than we do outside of Israel. Therefore, they have an earlier time that they go ahead and they ask for Baruch, they ask for rain. But we outside of Israel, we start now, today. So last night was the opening bell of the Saint Tal Racha, or for the Sfardim, they call it Baruch Aleinu. Adam, is that clear or not good? Okay, so now the Gemara says, Amalei Rava Leshameh. Rava says to his person who was his shamash, his attendant, who was helping him out, and he says, Atun delo kim luchu b'shud rabbanan. You who are not careful, who are not experts, to know the exact time, to understand the time that the rabbis gave. The rabbi said, when is the gray zone exactly? How long the gray zone is? So you who are not so experts in understanding this time period. Ad Shamsha, meaning that maybe you're not that the sun went down. Does that call that the sun went down? Not Ad Shimsha Aridikli. When the sun is in the top of the palm trees, when the sun is high up, that's at Atlushraga. That's where you should go ahead and light the candles, and don't wait till later. When you get close to that gray zone, maybe you'll enter the gray zone. You won't realize you entered the gray zone. So therefore, make sure that you're going to light the candles for Shabbat. The last thing, which let's say that might be the last thing you'll do for Shabbat. We'll see more about that. But you should go ahead and make sure to light the candles when it's clearly day. So the Gemara says, Biyom hamu'unan mai. What about on a cloudy day? On a cloudy day, you can't see the sun in the sky. So now again, when he doesn't say that the sun in the sky on top of the trees, right? Which means already, it sounds like to me, the sun is already on its way, on its descending. But obviously, there's a certain amount of time that it takes from on top of the trees till it goes all the way down, right? Top of the trees, it's above, it's nicely, I don't know how long does that take? It's a good question. Maybe we got to take a little, we got to look on top of the palm trees and to see how much time does it take from the time that the sun is at the top of the palm trees, and it's still clearly day. You should, when is that time? How long does it take for the sun to go down? Adam, have you been out with the palm trees recently with the sun to see how much time it takes from the time that you haven't been out there in New Orleans? Come on. What do you think you go to New Orleans for? To check out the sunset. Right? We got to look at the palm trees. We got to look at how much time it takes from the sun to go down. But it's a clear amount of time that you're being safe. Trying to say to you to be safe. Don't play too close. When you get too close to a fire, people get burnt. Right? So we are on, by the way, 35B1 on the right side, towards the bottom now. Biyom hamu'unan. What do you do on a cloudy day? You can't see where the sun is. So what do you do to know when should I stop doing work? So he says something fascinating. The mata, if you're in the city, chazei tanagola. Go take a look at the rooster. The roosters, what do? They sit on the beams of the buildings. They sit there towards the end of the day. So if they go ahead and they sit there towards the end of the day, you know that the end of the day is here. It's still daylight. And now it's time to, that's your sign. That's like the alarm. Good morning, Ronnie. That's your alarm that you should go ahead and light the candles. See, once it's night, the roosters, they don't hang out on the roofs anymore, right? On the beams on the roof. So if you want to go ahead and be careful, they want that you're not playing it too close. So when you see them on the roofs, go ahead. That's a sign the day is almost over. They're relaxing. They're relaxing. Then they're going to leave. They're taking a little rest or something, and then they're going to leave. So go over there and go light the candles.
I don't know if you're going to find a rooster in the city.
It's hot, right. So the Gemara says. So Ralph was looking, said, where are you going to find a rooster in the city? In the old days, they would have, like people have chickens running around their house, most probably, and the roosters running out of the house. In Vidavra, in the field, look for the ravens. If you're in a field, if you see the ravens, ravens gather in the field towards the end of the day. Once once the night begins, they leave. So inami. So therefore, inami. So the Gemara says inami, or there's another idea what you could do for the people who are in the fields. What should you do? Adani. Adani is a certain type of plant. It's a type of like squash. The leaves bend to face the sun. It moves, the leaves bend according to which way the sun is. If the sun is shining, it's so in the morning hours, in the AM hours, the leaves are leaning towards the east. Middle of the day, the leaves are straight, vertical. And then when it comes as the day towards evening, it turns towards the sun is setting to the west. These leaves, this type of gourd, this type of squash, starts going down towards facing the west. So once you see the leaves are going down at a certain point, obviously don't wait till they're all the way down. When there's a certain amount down, you already know that the end of the day is coming. So when you see that, obviously you're not lighting the candles when it's starting to go to the west, because then it's only early afternoon. But it means when it's before it gets all the way down. I think the language of the Rashi is at night they bend tremendously to the right, to the west, so extremely to the west. So that's what I would say. That means that when it's on its way down. It's moving. Okay, that's the side. Tana Rabbanan. Now the Gemara is going to say something fascinating over here about how, in the old days, what they used to do with blowing the shofar erev Shabbat. I want to get out. We'll see more. Maybe the Chafetz Chaim. Maybe I'll take out the Chafetz Chaim now. 1 second. You see, they're very concerned. They want, people by nature. People get caught up in work, and the rabbi did certain things in those days to help the people to make sure that they are not going to violate the Shabbat. So what did the rabbis do? Dona Rabbana, Sheish Tekiyot, there were 6 sounds of the shofar. We are already now in 35b2 on the top of the page. Sheish Tekiyot, 6 sounds were sounded, and we're going to see it's the first sound will be a tekiah. Rashi says, then the second sound will be a trua, the breaking sound. Then there'll be a tekiah will be a third sound, and then they will repeat that same set for 4, 5, and 6. Tekiah, trua, tekiah. So there were 6 sounds of the shofar that were blown erev Shabbat. And the point of these, the Gemara will say, what was the point of these blowing? Why are they blowing the shofar? It's not Rosh Hashanah, right? So why are you blowing the shofar? So the Gemara says, Rishonah, the first blow was Kedei lahaftil es ha'am mimelacha shebesadot. The people that are working in the fields should stop working. It's an alarm that goes off. The shofar is an alarm to wait. People, you're in the fields, and Rashi says they would go to the highest place. They go to the roof of the highest place in the city, and that's where they would blow the shofar from. They had a specific roof, and that was in the middle of the city, and that sound was a alarm for the people in the field, in the fields. You got to go ahead and stop working. time, that's the bell. Stock market has a bell, right? It's over. This was the bell for for the people to know it's time, it's over. Good morning, doctor. That they got to, because they got to get back to the city, right? The people that are working in the fields, there's a lot of workers working in the fields. Not necessarily that everybody's like, we travel throughout America today. Morning, you see a field, you see a farm. The person lives on the farm. It's like a mom and pop shop. But there's a lot of workers that come to farms too. It's not only the family that's living on the farm. There's a lot of workers that come to, and also not necessarily the people living there, because it's not a, it's a farm, it's fields. People don't live in the fields; they live in the city. So that you got to give them time to get home. It's traveling time, right? They got to catch a train, right? They got to walk. You imagine the transportation. What kind of transportation? You got to have the horse and buggy. Whatever. What do you got to get? You got to. If you're living in the city in the field, so you got to go ahead and tell they are the first people that you notify. The people in the fields. Most probably they're the furthest away from the city. Shnia, the second sound, which was not much later, they made a second sound, lahavtil ir v'chanuyot, that the people should stop doing work in the city, and that the storekeepers should close the shops. That was the second, got to close businesses have to close now. Now it's time to close the businesses. Now it's time, not to do work. You're in the city. What are you doing? You're building something in the city. You're fixing something in the city. You're doing the middle of a job in the city. We have to see what's included in this malacha. But let's say it's referring to that type of work, whatever type of work you're doing as your job in the city, you should stop your work in the city. Now it's time to you're a craftsman, you're whatever you are, whatever type of work you're doing, you should stop working. You still could light candles, there's still other things you can do for Shabbat, but it sounds like it's more the work, the professional work that people do. Stop your professional work, close the stores. Shlishit, the third sound was lahadlik et haner. It's time to light the candles. Candle lighting time is here. That's when you hear that third blow, which was a tekiah sound, it's time to light the candles. By the way, today, still good morning, in Williamsburg, they still blow the alarm. They have an alarm. They have
Just going to ask that question.
And we hear this alarm. Good morning, Nathan, and welcome back. I was thinking about you. And I should think about Nathan more often. And they blow an alarm in Williamsburg, and you hear it on the Lower East Side. You hear it over the bridge.
They blow the shofar.
It's not a shofar. It's a loud warning. It's a loud alarm that you hear the Shabbat bell in Williamsburg, and we hear it. We hear it on the Lower East Side. You can hear it on the Lower East Side. I think it's around candle lighting time that they're blowing this alarm. They want everybody to stop. You got guys. It's candle lighting time. We got to help the people, just like we make announcements for Baruch Aleinu, right? We said started Baruch Aleinu today, right? We need an announcement, right? We might have had an announcement this morning, right? Right? We have to thank Murray. Most probably Murray made the announcement this morning. I tipped him off.
That's right.
Okay, so we have to remember. We have to remind the people. So we have to do things to help remind the people. It's time to. So that was the third blowing sound on Friday afternoon, was to get the people to stop. Tell the people you got to light the candles. Divrei Rav Natan. That's the words of Rav Natan. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says no. He says that the third sound served a different purpose. It's lachlot hatfilin. It's time to remove the tefillin. Because many people wore tefillin the whole day. Because really, technically, the mitzvah of tefillin is the whole day, right? we today, it's hard for us to, in the time of the Gemara, many people wore tefillin the whole day, except why don't we wear tefillin? If I would wear tefillin, say it again. That's a great question. When did they change it? It doesn't seem that everybody, so it seems as they felt that people had difficulty keeping their body clean. Because when you're wearing tefillin, you're not allowed to emit gases. You can't, and any of the body needs to be very clean. A blacksmith would wear tefillin the whole day. Imagine you could be a blacksmith, you could be a tailor. They had tefillin that was part of you. The same way people wear a yarmulke or where people wear tzitzit, they had tefillin on the whole day. And the point of the tefillin was to remind them about Hashem, reward and punishment. Shema Yisrael was in the tefillin. Vayim Shemo was in the tefillin about reward and punishment. Then you have Kadesh Vayikaviach, they start the minyan over here in the morning. Kadesh Li Kol B'chor, that's in the tefillin. You have 4 sections in the tefillin. Remember the Exodus, remember God's power, God's miracles. They wore that the whole day. But once it became more difficult, people keep their bodies clean, they said, we're not going to wear it the whole day. And therefore, you get the mitzvah by wearing it for a second. You can get them, it's like tefillin, like there's the minimum you have to wear it for a second. But every second you're wearing it, you're getting a mitzvah. So therefore that's what that is unique about the mitzvah of tefillin. That's why if a person put on the tefillin and they forgot to say a bracha on the tefillin, you could still say a bracha because every moment you're about to do the mitzvah. It's not like the mitzvah's over, right? If you did a mitzvah and the mitzvah's over, let's say before you dip glasses in a mikveh, before you dip metal silverware before you dip silverware in a mikveh, you say a bracha, and then you dip. But once you dip it, it's too late to say a bracha. You already did the mitzvah. It's over. But when it comes to tefillin, the mitzvah is continuous. Therefore, you can technically make the bracha. You move your tefillin, and then you make the bracha if you forgot and you've already put it on before saying the bracha, because you're supposed to say the bracha before you, right? It's before you tie the knot. You say the bracha, and then you tie the knot, right? So, because the mitzvah is continuous. But Shabbat, you're not allowed to wear tefillin on Shabbat. Because Shabbat, tefillin is an oath. Tefillin is a sign to us and a God. And Shabbat itself is a sign. Have a great Shabbat. And therefore, we don't wear tefillin on Shabbat. But you've been wearing tefillin the whole day. So he holds that the third blow is to tell the people it's time to take off your tefillin. But based on this halacha, technically the mitzvah tefillin is the whole day. If a person, for whatever reason, did not put on tefillin in the morning, they can put it on the afternoon. They're not supposed to delay. You're supposed to put on tefillin the first thing in the morning. You shouldn't eat before you put on your tefillin. You're not supposed to eat before you daven, before you put on your tefillin. But technically, if there's a person that's Rabbi, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I didn't put on my tefillin. Put on your tefillin. Say a bracha. The mitzvah is still declared. The mitzvah is still. Right. Technically, meaning that's not the way it's supposed to be done. In life, there's the things that's supposed to be done a certain way, and there's things in life that, for whatever reason, we didn't, the person, I have an example, 2 days ago. So a student of mine, his father's in the hospital, very sick. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. For some reason, the student put on tefillin. I don't know, whatever the story was. So, okay, you got to put on the tefillin now. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You got to put on the tefillin. You got to put on tefillin. You can't miss out. In Baruch College, there's boys that are putting on tefillin at 1:30 in the afternoon. It's not the way it's supposed to be done. They're supposed to be putting on tefillin in the morning, like exactly what you said. But not everybody does the way it's supposed to be done, right? Not everyone does the way it's supposed to be done. You're supposed to say the Shema with the tefillin in the morning. You're supposed to do that. You're correct. I'm not giving anyone an allowance to put into, okay. Oh, the rabbi said now I'll just put on my tefillin. I'll stop putting on my tefillin in the afternoon. No, that's not. The rabbi is just saying in extreme circumstances. And you know what? You know what? What do you do on a fast day in the community? A lot of times the community, they put on tefillin when in the afternoon, right? And mincha. What's going on over there? Because the answer is because it is the mitzvah. What? Right. And because it's a time of tefillin. The afternoon is also a time of tefillin. The whole day is a time of tefillin. I'm like, so now if you see anybody who says, I missed davening this morning, so if someone tells you, you know what, I missed minyan this morning, I didn't pray yet. I didn't pray, whatever. You can ask him that you put on your tefillin. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I didn't put on my he doesn't know. Tell him, put on your tefillin. That's how you're supposed.
You can't pray.
Right. You can pray mincha with tefillin morning.
You can just put it on there.
Exactly. He can say the bracha morning joke. He can say it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, even if he's not praying. Let's say the guy's not on the level to pray. Everybody's in different places in life, right? People, not everyone's there where they're supposed to be yet, right? But at least if he's ready to put in the morning, if he's ready to put on his tefillin for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, let's take what we get. And also you can tell him to pray like Nathan says, you get him to pray with the tefillin on mincha, whatever that's he already prayed mincha. He didn't pray mincha. He's not going to pray mincha. I don't whatever his situation in life is. But at least let him put on the tefillin at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Right? That's what we need to encourage. So he holds the third. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi holds the third blow. Joe, we're talking about on Friday. In the old days, they would blow the shofar on Friday afternoon. They blew 6 sounds, 6 different time periods for different purposes. Mainly, some of the reason was to get the people to stop working. One sound for the people in the field, one sound for the people in the stores to stop. Time to close the shops. And we'll see. Maybe on Monday we'll see what that. The Chafetz Chaim might talk about the fact that it's good that every city should have people going around encouraging the people to close shop. It's time to close shop. Now, you shouldn't close shop so late, close to Shabbat. Because if people go very close to Shabbat, when you come too close to a fire, you get burnt, right? Sometimes you get too far, you get too caught up in the business, and therefore you come late, you're gonna get home late. And that's a big problem. You can't desecrate the Shabbat. So they have these, so therefore different towns should figure out how to deal with the situation. And I would say everybody's personal home. Some people, when people have children in their houses, teenagers in their houses, and teenagers are not always, they don't always do things in a timely manner. They're not always ahead of the game on the clock. And you got to go ahead and, it's good to remind them, parents should not just say, I'm doing my thing, like leave it to me. Kids need, you know what? Candle lighting is coming up, everybody. Let's hurry up. Let's be on the move a little bit. You know what I mean? A little bit, a little coaching, so to speak, from the people of the house. Now, Yeshua, and after they blew the third sound, there was still enough time to do last-minute cooking of roasting a fish, a small fish, some sardines or some small fish. K'dei dug platan. Everyone wants to have that fresh bread for Shabbat. So it's enough time to put that morning bread. They would attach the dough to the inside wall of the oven. That's how they would stick it against the oven, and that's how they would make the bread. And there's enough time still for you to put that bread in for it to crust, to form a crust already. There's enough time before Shabbat to do that. So you're giving, people are giving that time. And then v'tokeya, and after they had that time period, then you blow the fourth sound, umaria, then you blow a fifth sound, which is a breaking sound like a trua. Again, fourth sound, tkiya, straight sound, two. Then you have the trua, which is either two, or two, whichever way. There's different opinions what's called the trua. Then Tokeya, then you blow the sixth sound again, the sixth sound at Tokeya again, and now Vishovit. Now everybody knows it's time to. After the sixth sound, it's over. No more doing any work. Some want to point out that it said that the third sound they blew to tell the people it's time to light the candles, or some say the third sound it's time to take off the tefillin. The fourth sound was for what? For lighting the candles. But you still had time to roast the fish. which takes very fast, small fish doesn't need a lot of time, right? The bigger the fish, the bigger the time. And also you had time to sort of put the dough in the oven. So now it seems that you might be doing work after candle lighting. So it would seem to someone approve from this Gemara that not necessarily you accept the Shabbat by the candle lighting. You meaning to say, we know if a person lights candles and they have in mind not to accept the Shabbat yet, I want to still go in the elevator, right? The lady has to go somewhere and she doesn't want to, she doesn't want to walk down the steps. What? So driving to shul. So you can have the candle lighting. You didn't accept the Shabbat, and you can still do work. But many like in the Ashkenaz community, generally when the women light the candles, they accept the Shabbat then at that time, unless they have in mind not to accept by the candle lighting, and then they have those extra minutes until they have to refrain from work, obviously before sunset. For everybody, from sunset, everybody has to stop. Not only sunset, we're supposed to add a couple of minutes, add to the Shabbat. Maybe 2 minutes, if possible, 2 minutes before Shabbat, refrain from work. Have a beautiful day. Thank you for joining, everybody. You have a beautiful Shabbat. You too.
Bye, Shalom.
See, we
Thank
learned
you.
something new, right? Everything. Thank you so much. Shabbat you too.
Bye, Shalom.
Shabbat you too. Thank you, Ralph. Beautiful Shabbat. A Shabbat of great things. All the best.
Same here.